All right, guys, we're going to talk about the three main takeaways in conclusion I want you to have. So first, you need 2 vaccines and a booster to make sure that you are fully vaccinated. Why 2 shots? Well, that's the full dose of the COVID-19 vaccine. But you also need a booster because, as we talked about, the longer you are from the last second shot, the less the vaccine efficacy is going to be. So you need that 3rd shot 5 months after your 2nd vaccine. And those need to continue. Every couple months, you need to make sure to get that booster to make sure that you're always protected. The second thing is, make sure to wear a mask. There's evidence that shows that if you wear a mask, we lessen the spread of disease. And I know you guys have been hearing this since 2020. I'm sure you're tired of it, but it is crucially important. And one of the reasons why it's so important is because you can be asymptomatic. Which means that you can be sick and not show symptoms. That means you can still get other people sick while not showing symptoms. So while we are sick, we need to make sure that we are wearing masks for ourselves and for others, and if someone else is sick, wear a mask around them. The last thing I want to take away is if you are sick, you must stay home. Being in a classroom setting, so many of us are so close to each other, we can get a lot of people sick if we don't stay home. So really, if you get sick, please talk to your parents, stay home. And so that was my presentation. I'm sure it was really boring, but thank you for sitting with me. And so let's get into the game. I hope you're listening because I'm going to be asking you questions that you're going to answer from my presentation. So first, I am your doctor. I'm the first line of defense. I'm going to be vaccinating you. You're going to come up to me individually, and I'm going to ask you a question from my presentation. If you get it right, you have your first vaccine. But that's not enough. You need to go to the free throw line and shoot a free throw. If you get that, that's your 2nd vaccine. But you may be asking, Ms. Panda, what happens if I don't get either of those? Well, then you're infected. So the people who have their 2 vaccines are going to come to the sideline here, and the goal is to run across the court. If you're infected, so again, if you miss my question or miss the free throw, you're infected. You're going to stand on the sideline, take a foam ball. You have to choose where you're going to stand on the sideline. You are not welcome to move. You choose, you plant, and you're going to pick a classmate and chuck your ball at them. If you hit them, if you are running and you are hit by a ball, you are to sit on where you are hit and you are now infected. To everyone who makes it across the court, you have your 3rd shot, you are boosted. What the kids don't know is I'm going to be the 3rd and final defense. If they get hit I'm going to choose a kid and hit them with the ball if they make it all the way across. And that kid is going to be infected. And that's to show them, just because you had 3 shots of the COVID-19 vaccine does not mean you cannot get sick. So now we're going to look at the vaccine efficacy rates, and the reason I want to really focus on this is boosters restore vaccine efficacy. Vaccine efficacy is just a measure of how well a vaccine works. So when we're looking at this graph here, we're going to split between ages 12 to 15 and 16 to 17. We're looking between 14 to 149 days. The vaccine efficacy rate is 83% for 12 to 15 and 76% for 16 and 17. When we go to 150 days plus, we're dropping down to 38% for 12 to 15 year olds and 46% for 16 to 17. However, the researchers realized that we are dropping in these numbers, but gave the booster to 16 to 17 year olds, which increased the rate to 86%. So again, I really want to emphasize the boosters restore vaccine efficacy, and we can see by these very clear numbers in this chart. So why does this data matter to you? As parents, we need to know, what does this data mean and why should it matter to you? So the biggest thing that I want to emphasize to you guys is sick days. When your child gets sick, not only does it affect them and their learning, but also it can impact you. So the CDC says that fully vaccinated participants with Omicron infection spend an average of 1/2 day less sick in bed than unvaccinated participants with Omicron infection. When we're talking about vaccine rates, we're not just talking about your children, we're also talking about you. So if your child is vaccinated and gets sick, and you're also vaccinated, it's possible that you may not get sick, and it's possible that you both might get sick, but spend fewer time in bed. The second thing the CDC says is overall, unvaccinated participants with COVID-19 symptoms experienced an average of 6.9 days with illness symptoms, spent an average of 1.9 days sick in bed, and missed an average of 24 hours of school because of illness. If a child is in school for 8 hours a day, that is 3 days of missed school. That's a lot for kids, especially when we're talking about middle school and high school. 3 days is almost like a week of making it school again. So it's really important that our kids get vaccinated to prevent them from missing such a severe amount of school. And the other thing is that you can get sick again from COVID. Just because you get it one time does not mean that you're immune. So if your child is consistently missing 3 days of school at a time, that's a lot to catch up on. The third thing that the CDC says is among 106 vaccinated participants with Omicron infections, 37.6% were asymptomatic. Those reporting COVID-19 symptoms spent 1.4 days in bed, which is 0.6 days fewer than reported for unvaccinated participants. Why does asymptomatic matter? That matters because if you're unvaccinated or vaccinated and you show up to school asymptomatic, your child can still get sick without realizing that their classmate is sick because their classmate doesn't know they're sick. So now we're going to be talking about our next myth. The next myth we're going to be talking about is COVID-19 vaccine provides permanent immunity. Unfortunately, that is not true. COVID-19's vaccine efficacy is limited, which is why it's important to get the booster shot. What is vaccine efficacy? The definition is a measure of how much the vaccine lowered the risk of getting sick. So now we're going to look at the age groups that the CDC split the groups into. So we have 12 to 15 and 16 to 17. When we're looking at 12 to 15, the efficacy rate for 14 to 149 days is 83%. But at 150 days and longer, it drops down to 38%. When we're looking at the vaccine efficacy rate for 16 to 17-year-olds, we have from 14 to 149, 76%, but it drops down to 46% after 150 days and longer. However, they did a booster shot on the 16 to 17-year-old population and found that after 7 days, the vaccine efficacy rate went back up to 86%. And with all this to say, this is just further evidence that it is important to get the vaccine booster shot because your vaccine efficacy rate after a couple months will go down. Our next myth is the COVID-19 vaccine is 100% effective. Unfortunately, that is not true. You can still get sick on the COVID-19 vaccine. However, you'll be sick the data shows you'll be sick for a short amount of time and with less severe symptoms. So what does the CDC say? The CDC says fully vaccinated participants with the Omicron infection spent an average of 1/2 day less sick in bed than did unvaccinated participants with Omicron vaccine. And of course, the Omicron and Delta variations are different, as are many of the variations in the COVID-19 pandemic that we're looking at. So Omicron-associated COVID-19 symptoms lasted an average of 5.3 days and resulted in an average of 18.8 hours of missed school, which was 3.4 fewer days of symptoms and 10.6 fewer hours of school missed than Delta-associated COVID-19. Unfortunately, we don't get to decide which variant we get when we get sick, so it is really important that, again, we maintain our vaccination rates. So, in conclusion, we want to talk about what we had talked about was that COVID-19 vaccine safety is being constantly monitored through BeSafe and VAERS. And the 2 doses of vaccine and the booster are recommended for full coverage for an extended period of time. And finally, rates of disease are variant dependent. The vaccine helps to some extent to all the variants. Now, I want to make sure that we are coming together as a congregation. I have dispelled 3 myths that are common when we're talking about what makes COVID-19 true and false, but I want to hear from you guys. What are you guys concerned about, and what is your congregation concerned about when they're concerned about giving the